2003 was an unbelievable year for video games, with titles like Knights of the Old Republic, Sands of Time, and Wind Waker just to name a few. There was also an amazingly creative and compelling game that got left on the shelves regardless of stellar reviews from critics and players alike. That game was Beyond Good and Evil, and despite being considered a commercial failure at the time, something strange happened throughout the last 2 decades. People still talked about it, kept recommending it, and most importantly, remembering it, to the point where now it's considered one of gaming's greatest cult classics. And the reason why has everything to do with how each part of the game works together. The core elements, like its music, gameplay, and story, cohesively grow as you play through Jade's journey, discovering the beautiful world of Hylas and a diabolical conspiracy threatening it. Now, I only heard about Beyond Good and Evil a year ago when the Anniversary Edition released, which improved the graphics and audio while keeping the same core gameplay and feel of the original. So no rose-tinted nostalgic glasses for me. We'll be using the Anniversary version because my GOG copy of the original had some odd issues. But from my research comparing the two, they enhanced more than they changed, which is a testament to what Ubisoft created all that time ago. Sadly, I don't think we'll ever get a sequel or prequel to this game, even if they hinted about the possibility on their website. Ubisoft is going through some problems right now, and rumors have circulated around the continuation of the franchise since 2004, so don't hold your breath. Despite that, I felt it was important to talk about Beyond Good and Evil since it accomplishes something most games don't. It stays with you, not because it's the biggest or most technically impressive game for the time, but because it created a narrative within a world that feels alive and worth exploring. And that's what we'll be doing today, going through the whole game, highlighting gameplay mechanics, sound design, aesthetic atmosphere, and the main narrative, to get a better picture about why Beyond Good and Evil still matters.
The war has arrived at the gates of Hylas. This peaceful mining planet in System 4 is now completely encircled by the Dom's armada. General Keck, Supreme Commander of the Alpha Forces, would like to take this opportunity to address a final message to the population.
Loyal Hylians, the impending battle will be a difficult one.
We're quickly introduced to our main character, Jade, as a Dom's attack commences, but luckily we have a shield barrier.
Shield disabled.
Your Optima account is
350.
Eunice short. Your electrical supply has just been blocked.
Oh, that hits too close to home. Starting the game without knowing anything about it, I was pleasantly surprised by the variety of creative design choices that I don't think we see enough of nowadays. The Dom's aesthetic is intriguing and creepy. Their drones resemble a skeletal insectoid with a hollow crystal at their center where they place their victims. We get our first taste of combat, which was just okay. We'll go more in depth later, but I was surprised there wasn't a lock-on mechanic similar to Ocarina of Time. The game does do a decent job with directional attacks. I never felt like I was swinging aimlessly once I got the feeling down, but it did take a little bit to get used to. We rescue the children, but are taken by another Dom's variant, the stalk-eyed creature that looks like it could be from Resident Evil. Within its clutches, Jade receives these flickering images of some entity that I can only assume is the leader of the Doms. Paige is introduced, making a triumphant entrance, and helps Jade out of the bind. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but Paige is a pig. It goes back to those creative design choices I was just speaking about. You'll meet a lot of animal characters throughout your travels, some part of the natural fauna, and some being part of the Hylas society. I thought the variety worked well at establishing a more humorous and lighthearted effect, while the overall themes are much more sinister. Defeating the stalk creature, the player receives their first pearl. Pearls act as the currency for upgrades and can be found exploring the world map, completing challenges, and documenting wildlife. The alpha sections finally show up, and for a force that's supposed to be protecting the planet, they seem inept.
Here is where some of the children whose parents have been captured by the Doms have been taken in by 2 devoted and courageous Hylians. Miss, a word for our listeners.
Yeah, well, you guys are not what I'd call as fast as a speeding bullet. Keep doing nothing, and next time, there'll be nothing left here to save.
Cut! Hey, Pop, stay zen. Don't get your snout bent out of shape.
I enjoyed the way Beyond Good and Evil opens up its story. We get the context from the reporter that Jade and Paige run an orphanage for children whose parents have been taken or killed by the Dom's attacks. Most of the background for the characters or events happens organically, either through dialogue or discs, which will be introduced later. Despite repelling the Dom's attacks, our shield barrier is kaput, and we don't have the funds to repair it. Cue Secundo, Jade's personal AI that has an idea on how to remedy the situation.
Units, you want units? You come to Secundo, mia bella. Listen to this.
The director of the Science Center wants to catalog all animals on the planet and will pay good money for it, plus some pearls. Luckily, Jade is handy with a camera and another gameplay mechanic is unlocked. The layers are starting to appear. Exploration is the basis of the game, and now you have the additional incentive to look closer for animals to catalog within each area. They can range from tiny critters to gigantic flying manta rays, which reinforce the biodiversity element to the world building. The game doesn't have to tell you where to look, but shows you within the first level. Some animals are easier to find, and some are more hidden, which leads the player into searching every corner of the map, at least it did for me. With money in our account, power is restored to the lighthouse shield barrier, and we're able to bring the hovercraft in for some much needed repairs.
Well, that's it. Finito. Dead.
Ah, stupid tugboat! The garage is only 300 meters away.
Mama go garage, you know. When your mama won't go, you know.
Welcome to Mama Goes, a mechanic shop run by Jamaican rhinos. The anniversary edition somewhat addresses the stereotypes used within the game. I'm glad that they acknowledged the negative impact of these representations and didn't try to hide their choices from the original. I think it does more good to be truthful about these certain choices than trying to obfuscate them years later, but that's just my opinion. Mama Goes is your one-stop shop for Pearl upgrades, ranging from a new motor to a space rocket and many things in between. With our hovercraft ready to go, the Doms strike again, but this time with a gigantic bone worm. This was an exciting moment. The spectacle was there, piloting the hovercraft felt responsive, and the music was pumping. I was only an hour into the game, but was so impressed with all of these distinctive aspects working in tandem. I feel like games nowadays really stick to one genre of gameplay, so this was a breath of fresh air so early into the game, which continues throughout the adventure. After a brief stint in the capital city, Jade receives a mysterious message. A Mr. de Castellac wants to meet us on Black Isle, and there's a lot of credits involved, so sounds good to me. Mr. de Castellac's representative starts the slow burn for the player that the situation on Hillis is much more dire than first thought. He insinuates that the Alpha sections are covering up the truth, that the Doms have already taken over the planet and it's just the illusion of safety that has kept the Alpha sections in power. To prove this to the populace, Jade is tasked with entering the Black Isle mine, discovering the Dom's variant within, and getting photographic proof of its existence. This is our first dungeon, if you will, and Paige shows off his secretive invention, the jet boots. You might get icked out on how they're powered.
They run on homemade biocarburant. Here's the pocket of pressurized methane. And here, in the soles, are the 2 turbo reactors. All you have to do to fire them up is contract your abdominal muscles. It's the transportation of the future.
It does lead to our companion mechanic, which was easy to pick up on. With a simple press of the triangle button, Paige will interact with the various environmental objects and enemies around him, using his jet boots to either send an enemy upwards or allow Jade to traverse platforms. I also enjoyed the small detail of taking photos of dungeon maps to reveal the area. Something about tangibly finding your map and pulling it up on your camera was neat. Another neat detail was the change in camera perspective during certain moments. Transitioning from free cam to a fixed position gave more depth to certain areas. There's more fighting to be had, now with multiple opponents on screen. Now, I never said this game was perfect, and I think one of the lacking features was close quarters combat. There isn't enough variety in Jade's attacks, making combat feel repetitive, even if most of the enemies have different attack patterns and projectiles. Jade's attacks consist of the normal smack with your staff, an AoE charge mechanic that looks cool for the first couple of times, but gets old quickly. Later on you do get a pseudo range attack, but it's a bit clunky. Regardless, deeper in the mine, we find the creature Mr. de Castellac was looking for. Unfortunately for Jade, it doesn't like getting its picture taken. I know I was just saying combat wasn't fulfilling, yet the boss fights in the game are well done and unique. They're difficult enough where the player has to pay attention, but are not overly punishing. Maybe that's not true for all of them. With the creature defeated, it's revealed that there was never really a Mr. de Castellac, and we get this humorous bit where the swanky car turns into a typical cab. I don't know why I found this so funny.
Please forgive this little charade. My name is Han. I'm a member of the Iris Network.
But what was this all for? Well, Han tells us that it was a test for Jade set up by the Iris Network, a rebellion group who's trying to expose a deeper threat to Hillis. Jade immediately assumes it's the Dom's threat and believes in the Alpha Section's ability to stop them. However, Han tells her it's the Alpha Sections themselves who pose the danger, explaining that for every one person they save, they capture 10 more. Despite seemingly defending Hillis for years, Han believes that the Alpha Sections use the Doms as a pseudo-false flag, leading to their takeover of the Hillis government. In order to break their iron grip over the population, the Iris Network wants hard evidence of the atrocities perpetrated by the Alpha Sections. If Jade can manage that, they can print her photo evidence in their newspaper, hopefully swaying the population's opinion. It's an interesting aspect of the game that shouldn't be overlooked. Instead of focusing on killing the bad guys, you're tasked with being a journalist. It's a cool shift from the head-on brawler type games and gets woven into the stealth mechanics later on. We're told where we can find the Iris Network and off to the city we go. The visuals here are marvelous, and I enjoyed the mix of older European style architecture combined with the futuristic underpinnings like these huge propaganda TVs and security checkpoints. You could also subscribe to the two different newspapers, one an outlet for the Alpha Sections called the Hillian Word, and the other being the Iris Network. It felt relevant to today's divisive news despite the game coming out 20 plus years ago. Maybe it's always been like this.
The Dom strike yet once again 2 days ago in the West Quarter. Without the aid of the courageous Alpha Sections, the toll would have been even higher. The recruiting campaign intensifies.
Anyways, Jade makes it to the bar where the Iris Network is located, but before we make contact, I want to point out a couple of things. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, the overall designs are awesome, like this bull bartender or a shark who likes to play a variation of air hockey. Then you have posters lining the bar about a one-cow show and magic pulp, an octopus magician. It made me want to know more about Hillis and explore different parts of the planet, which would have been awesome for a sequel or prequel. But I digress. And I can't forget to mention the music here is fantastic. It's fantastic everywhere, but the propaganda song stuck with me. We gain access to the Iris Network's secret den, and Jade meets the team operating on Hillis.
This is May, editing and distribution of our newspaper Iris. Nino, radio operator, transmissions, and tireless poster sticker.
Hey.
Even though the team is small here, Han shows that the network spans 13 different systems with many operatives. The team showed Jade their understanding of what the Alpha Sections are perpetrating. Dom's attacks injure civilians. The Alpha Sections take the victims under the guise of bringing them medical care, but are never taken to local hospitals. Instead, they're kidnapped and taken to 3 locations: a processing factory, an old slaughterhouse, and then a moon base. What happens within or in between these locations, Han and the rest of them do not know. Their best agent, Double H, who was supposed to gain intel on the factory, hasn't contacted HQ in 4 days, and fearing the worst, want Jade to take over his mission. Jade isn't 100% behind the Iris network just yet, but her curiosity for the truth and wanting the best for the planet has her accepting the job. She'll need to get photographic evidence of the victims as well as photos of the Alpha sections without their helmets. Jade and Paige make it to the factory after an upgrade or 2 for our hovercraft, and we get our second dungeon. I'm calling it a dungeon because that's how my brain thinks of it. There are puzzles that need solving, an alluded to boss called a Reaper, and a gigantic map layout with multiple floors. After some exploring, we discover Double H hooked up to a DOMS contraption and free him. The voice acting across the board is great, especially Robert Burns, who plays Double H. He nails the confident, temporarily brain-damaged mixture to perfection.
My name is Jade, and I haven't the foggiest how we're gonna get out of here.
For that, I may be of some assistance there.
So you are Double H?
Double H, Triple Z, oh, whatever pleases you, don't ask me. All I know is that in another 10 minutes, I was a goner.
And we have a dog-dad connection because he also voiced Krieger in the original Far Cry game, which was a neat piece of knowledge. I also enjoyed the fun slapstick comedy the developers added in, which is a great contrast to the heavier themes we're about to see.
This virus! Don't worry, everything's just fine. I'll find a way out of here!
We get our first boss fight against the Reaper. I forgot to mention it before, but in the same room you save Double H, you also find your projectile weapon. It's not very impressive, only converting your camera into an M-disc launcher, but it does the job. Anyway, the Reaper is defeated and we gather more evidence of what's going on in the factory. Yeah, I know they hinted at human trafficking, but I still wasn't prepared for it. It kind of made me question what age group this game was made for. You have the fun animal/human coexistence, diverse fauna with Pokemon Snap mechanic, but then you get the alien abduction, mystical evil, and well, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Paige gets taken by the Alpha sections and we listen to an M-disc he gave us before entering the factory. One of the pros of the game's narrative is not spoon-feeding the player our characters' backgrounds. And one of the cons of the narrative is not giving enough of the character's background to the player. You don't get to know a lot about Jade or Paige from the base game, especially since it felt like Jade had very few lines throughout the game. The most information you'll get comes from this very M-disc. Paige explains that he and Jade's parents were very close, but because of some problems with the authorities, Jade was given over to Paige. Paige also says that the spaceship they used to come to Hillis is still on the island, but hidden behind some passcodes. And that's really all we get. There is an added-on side quest for the 20th Anniversary Edition, which does a decent job at filling in some of the questions surrounding Jade and her family, but without it, I'd feel like I was left in the dark. If you played Beyond Good and Evil when it first released, did you feel this way? Let me know. Anyways, Jade finds Double H again, who warns her not to get caught by the guards, and here starts the stealth portion. These were really well done sections of the game, and going into this blind, I was not expecting them. From the fixed camera angles to timing guard patterns, puzzle solving to the aesthetics and functionality of the area, I was enthralled. Sadly, we see Paige being processed on video, but do find his boots, which are important later on. One thing about the stealth sections that I thought could have used more focus was the guard's AI. Granted, when this game was made, large environmental areas were harder to generate, and I'm not asking for something akin to Metal Gear Solid 5. However, it was too easy to sound the alarm and then just hide 5 feet away from where the guards obviously saw you. You do get this cool visual of their bot scanning your last seen location, but nothing changes after detection. It might have been interesting to have guards change their patterns or be on high alert, because I soon realized that you could easily pick off one guard, alert everyone else, and leave just to come back to one less guard. Regardless, I still had fun with it, and Jade still has some evidence to collect and a page to save. Turns out the Alpha sections aren't human, looking more like the Toxic Avenger, and with the Governor's help, get the access codes to the loading dock. I want to quickly note that the level design within these dungeons are smooth. I do think an angel dies every time a game reviewer or writer says this layout is like Dark Souls, but I did think about it after such a long time stealthing through the factory, then coming back to where we started through possessing the square key card. We see Paige again, but now he's unconscious, being transported to the Slaughterhouse, and the Dom's overseer seems to be displeased with the Alpha section's inability to catch us.
The problem has been taken care of. My best men have found and neutralized all of the intruders. Everything's under control, Your Excellency. I'll take care of this minor detail myself.
Jade receives those same visions that we saw at the start of the game and faces off against the Magneto Doms. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Double H joins the fight, and with the power of teamwork, the Doms variant is defeated. Unfortunately, Double H has some parasite attached to him and needs to be taken to the Iris network before he succumbs to its power. We quickly get back to the city, but while the Iris team is working on saving Double H, Jade receives another vision of this entity. This time it's demanding our soul in exchange for Double H's life.
Your friend in exchange for your soul.
Luckily, we don't have to make that choice, as May injects a serum into the parasite and the mission is successful. Somewhat. Now that the Alpha section's illusion is shredded for Jade, she wants payback and to blow the lid off this thing. Already from our photos put into the latest edition, the populace of Hyllis is also starting to see through the veil. It was a neat detail seeing the progression of people protesting after each publication, and again was another facet of how this world felt alive. Before departing, you can ask Khan some questions about Iris, and he tells Jade that their section's leader hasn't been heard from in days, and no one knows his true identity. But we might find some clues at the Slaughterhouse. Getting there won't be a walk in the park, as the Alpha sections have tightened up security after our foray at the factory, and the only way inside without alerting the whole place will be going through a secret entrance inside a racetrack. Now, why there is a racetrack surrounding a slaughterhouse? Well, you got me, no idea. It kind of reminded me of Hydro Thunder on the N64 though. We find the entrance and get another awesome set piece, having to navigate this abandoned aqueduct while avoiding this gigantic electronic spider. It's these various sections throughout Beyond Good and Evil that I enjoyed the most, sitting back, exhaling a wow, and enjoying the variety of moments that felt distinct but cohesive to the bigger picture. Inside the Slaughterhouse, Jade and Double H are introduced to some more technically challenging puzzles, at least they were for me, and my earlier negative comment about the stealth detection was somewhat addressed. We'll be using this room for an example. You have guards patrolling as normal, but there is this laser gun floating ominously in the corner. The game does not explain what the mechanic is, so I was a little hesitant to approach it at first. And I was right to be scared, because getting detected by any guard will automatically have this laser gun one-shot you, regardless if you're behind cover. Now, as seemingly annoying as that is, it does address the issue of being able to kick a guard twice and then run away with no consequences. Yet for some reason, the laser doesn't have the range to cover the full room. I was able to pick off the guards one by being out of the laser's perimeter and luring them to the spot. It's like the developers knew the guards could be abused and tried to patch it up with a band-aid, but were only implemented in random rooms. Anyways, we go around the Slaughterhouse to collect our evidence, the first seeing some Dom's bodies being loaded by the Alpha section, the next where the Hyllis citizens are being drugged and transported, And the last piece is those same people ascending into rockets destined for the moon base, where we believe Paige has been taken. With the continued success of our endeavors, the governor is waiting at the Iris base and is happy to meet us. She gives us the star key, but before we can find out what it unlocks, the Lost Iris leader contacts the team over the radio.
Wild boar calling Iris.
Hey, that's my uncle! Paige!
Your uncle? Our chief?
I don't have much time. They're everywhere. They've taken me to the moon. Here are my instructions. Get this message to Jade, your new reporter. Read the M disc that I gave you and find the ship. Read the M disc and find the... They're coming! Ah!
I enjoyed this plot development, as we confirmed that Paige is still alive, but on the moon, and I felt like this fit his character, especially how he previously alluded to him being in trouble with the authorities. Paige references the M-Disc we talked about before, the one with the ship they used to get to Hyllis still being hidden somewhere on the Lighthouse Island. Not only could we save Paige, but the Alpha sections used their long-range transmitter to spread their propaganda from the moon base. If we could somehow disable it or transmit our findings to the whole world through the device, then a true upheaval could begin. Before we figured out how to find the ship, I wanted to see what the star key card was used for. This leads to some awesome sequences, starting off with a massive vertical platforming descent, a challenging movement mechanic, and my favorite stealth portion because there was no room to mess up. It also felt like the camera work was perfectly executed, giving a lot of depth to the area and the stealth system. All of this culminates with General Keck finding us and starting an engaging rooftop chase. All of these moments go back to the thesis, that Beyond Good and Evil isn't great for just one aspect, but a series of well-crafted sequences that work seamlessly. They just don't make games like this anymore.
Don't break up the team. Carlson and Peters, page 823.
Let them go. They'll lead us to an even larger prize.
Back at the lighthouse, Jade discovers the consoles Paige mentioned, and I was kind of flabbergasted that the codes came from the bottom of Paige's jet boots. I can't believe I've referenced Resident Evil a second time here, but you have to manipulate the item to find the codes, and I even read that you can finish the factory level without taking them, so some people probably had to go back just to advance the story. I think that's pretty cool that the game doesn't hold your hand for that. With the codes entered, Jade discovers the secret hangar with the ship and the start of the additional quest I briefly mentioned before. Jade finds mementos from her childhood, like this rusty knife or goggles that act like a treasure hunt, sending the player to previously explored areas now with the codes to unlock the safes. Within each safe is an M-Disc narrated by Jade's mother, and I thought the animation and voice acting was exquisite.
And know when the time is right to tell her about us. To show her these drawings I made, so she can see her pirate family as I see them. Jade was so scared of Yashan at first, but she quickly saw past the hard shell. She came to admire her and look up to her. For her confidence, her convictions, her devotion to us, her family. Tell Jade how she pushed herself to be just as strong. My dear Paige, you know Uma the best. I know how much she means to you, and I hope that without her there as your anchor, you're doing okay. Not only was she Jade's Auntie Uma to your Uncle Paige, but she was the whole goddess guiding light.
It's funny that even though I really enjoyed these moments of learning more about Jade's mother and Jade's upbringing as a galactic pirate, it sort of felt like the developers after 20 years were saying, we know you were wondering all of these things about the characters, so we made something special for you because we won't be able to follow up on any of this. It's bittersweet. You want to delve deeper into every facet of Jade's character, but I think this is the closest we'll ever get to a continuation of the universe. After finding every M-Disc in the set, you'll come back to the hangar and receive the final message from Jade's mother.
If you're seeing this, it means you and Paige have made it through. I never expected to record this, but then again, there's a lot of the unexpected in this life. For us pirates, even more so. We were supposed to stay together. You, me, the crew. Looking out for one another. But it wasn't meant to be.
This was kind of heartbreaking since Paige never told Jade about her past, her parents, who they were, or what they were involved in. It's a good character moment because Jade was orphaned just like the children she protects, and chose to live her life proactively, through photography and good deeds. I was, however, disappointed with the fact that all of this new content doesn't seem to affect Jade, as when the message ends, Jade doesn't react, and you can't talk to Double H about what just happened. What Jade does react to is the lighthouse getting bombed by the Alpha sections and the children being kidnapped while we made a quick trip to Mama Go's for upgrades. This was devastating for her since everything she cared for had been taken away.
Poor Wolf. I know how you are. You tried to help them. You told yourself that you wouldn't let them come to any harm. That you'd be there to protect them. I know, boy. But that isn't what actually happened. The kids are gone. And you couldn't do anything. You're here, alive and well. Who do you think you are? Did you think you'd actually be able to make a difference? Well, Wolf, you were wrong, boy. Completely and utterly wrong.
Jade's quick monologue talking with Wolf was poignant because even though she's addressing the dog, I think she's really talking about herself. As much as I like Jade as a character and was interested in her story, especially after both the scene with her mother's recording and Wolf, I think they dropped the ball in fleshing her character out. I know they thought of making a prequel to the game, which would probably address a lot of my comments, and eventually a sequel, but we have what we have. On that note, let's head to the next portion of the game. With the children taken to the moon base and Paige there as well, we need to get that flying ship into working order. This requires us to buy parts from Mama Go's with a ton of pearls. I was glad that I photographed every animal I saw because I think I only had one leftover pearl by the time we completed the necessary upgrades. In some ways, I enjoyed having to go back to the previous areas to obtain more pearls. This was made easier by having the pearl finder on the map, and flying around Hillis felt good mechanically. Plus was a nice perspective change from the hoverboat. I was a little thrown off by the design choice though, because you couldn't have gotten the right amount of pearls without backtracking with the flying machine. This affected the pacing of the game, which was stellar before this point. It's a slight gripe since it didn't take forever to acquire what we needed, and while recording, I think they just wanted you to have some time with the flying machine. With the final upgrade attached, we ventured to the moon and wow, what a cool visual. I feel like I was looking at a Necron base. Jade and Double H park our ship in the transmitter and quickly descend into the Dom's base. Throughout the game, every area had a distinct aesthetic, and this one took the prize. Talk about wanting to know more. The Dom's base had a mix of membrane walkways and energy crystal puzzles. It was a big departure from what we had seen before, yet worked wonderfully. I especially liked seeing the names of each level, which added to the mystique of the Doms themselves. Why was this place called the Cloister, or this the Great Crypt? There was more to these aliens than what we had seen. We find Paige trapped in a crystal and with some finagling unlock him, but we're too late.
I'll come back for you. I'll bring you back home.
Jade says her final words to him and continues on, traversing these energy elevators and discovers General Keck talking with the true leader of the Doms. You could just take the photo for the final piece of evidence and run, but eavesdropping on the conversation leads to something interesting. The Dom's leader says that his energy force is fading and that Kex must find the girl, which I assume to be us, but why would they need Jade? With a damning photo taken, we head back to the transmitter and lo and behold, Paige is alive somehow? Turns out Jade isn't just a normal human, but has some hidden power that can resurrect people. Okay? This kind of caught me off guard since at no point in the game other than a charge attack does Jade show any signs of having energy powers, let alone being able to revive someone. Instead of asking any questions about her powers or for Paige to elaborate on what he knows, Jade just says they need to rescue the kids. This will require a lot more firepower to breach the Dom's defenses, so Double H's hope is that if we can broadcast the photo of Kex and the Dom leader, that enough Hylians will show up for our cause. It's worth a shot. Secundo comes in clutch and takes control over the Alpha's propaganda signal, broadcasting a little truth to the people.
Señoras y of course, señoritas, keep open your eyes, si tutti quanti. I'm not going to be wasting your time with big speeches. I just wanting to show you the whole big picture. Los Alpha Section are traitors, banditos, imposters, rascals, wooden nickels.
I laughed out loud when the game actually used the photos I had taken, most of which were terrible, but it got the point across. I also laughed a lot when I got the newest edition of the Hylian word. The once staunch defender of the Alpha sections had changed their tune after the recent revelations.
The Hylian people have joined forces to drive the Alpha sections out of Hylis. Once again, the honorable journalistic profession was able to show that it had a preponderant role in the history.
Revolution spurred, the team escaped the transmitter before it self-destructs, and our ship gets tractor-beamed by Kex, which leads to another engaging boss fight. After taking him down, Jade needs to disable the tractor beam holding our ship back, and we get the certified badass moment.
Your days are numbered. May the angels of darkness rise to glory.
I heard some voices up there. Is there someone else still alive?
No, there's no one left.
Certified badass. Kex does say something important before dying about how the Doms have been on our trail for centuries, which confused me even more. I questioned if Jade's parents somehow stole her from the Doms during their piracy escapades. It wouldn't explain the centuries portion of it, but it would make sense to hide Jade away if they realized that she was being searched for by an intelligent alien race. Anyways, with the word spreading like wildfire on Hylis and Iris asking for assistance on the moon, we get the necessary firepower to break through the Dom's defenses and enter the Great Crypt. Jade finally confronts the Dom's leader, who unveils that this has all been an elaborate trap, that Shawnee, the name they used for Jade, is the source of their power, and someone did steal Jade, turning her into a human form in order to end the Dom's existence, which I guess didn't really work since they just fed off of other life forms. Unfortunately, despite the boss looking awesome, this fight was the worst. It was the worst because of one phase that took me an hour, maybe even more, to complete, and I was not the only one. Halfway through the battle, the leader puts Jade into a mind trance, inverting the controls, and is so quick to double attack that there was no way to avoid it. To add on to my misery, the checkpoint was a phase before, and I had run out of health potions, and the game only allows for one manual save, so I couldn't go back to the last place I purchased health potions to have a leg up. After my 20th death, I looked up methods on how to beat this. I'm not proud to say it, but the most talked about way of beating this boss was pause scumming every time the leader teleported. Doing so made it much easier to be facing the right direction, or I guess the opposite direction because of the inverse controls, and land a hit, which stopped the quick attacks from happening. After defeating the boss, I just don't have any explanation for what's going on, and it's really eating me inside now that we don't have a sequel or prequel to the series. Jade is obviously a strong entity with an interesting past that deserves more screen time. Ending on her saving everyone that was captured felt like the start of something powerful, but that's not how it transpired. Yet Beyond Good and Evil still matters because of what it accomplished within its 9-hour journey, not what it lacked outside of it. The characters felt genuine, comprising of a range of emotions that made interactions meaningful. The world of Hylis benefited from that, feeling lived in and vibrant, accompanied by beautiful visuals interlacing European architecture and futuristic technology. All of the various gameplay mechanics didn't feel like tacked-on additions or gimmicks, rather thoughtful and well-done sequences and ideas that added to the player's involvement within the world itself. I know this game will stick with me for a long time, and I would love to hear your thoughts, memories, or opinions on the game as a whole. What did you enjoy the most, if you were confused as me at certain points following the narrative, or whatever comes to your mind? I appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, it helps out the channel a lot, and if you're not already subscribed, Carlson and Peters Chapter 14, subscribe if you want more content. Hope you're doing well, and all the best. Dog Dad. Wait, they end on a cliffhanger? Oh gosh darn it.